All right, so let's see what we can do with the MCP server. Now I should check audio levels first. I do have headphones, but I never wear them because it doesn't really feel comfortable while I code. So maybe they'll come back, I don't know. But I am going to be doing some more MCP server stuff. So last week my stream got interrupted. I guess my computer just kind of gave up and didn't want to do it anymore. My battery got to like 10%, 5% or something like that, and it just shut down my stream. So I'm back today to go back over that because I didn't get very far with it. I'm trying to adjust my camera as well. Lots going on over here. But from what I understand, the MCP plugin is a little bit more highly anticipated than I thought it was going to be. So looking forward to getting back into it. And what I plan on doing is, now that I know how to like get it started and operating and all that, I'm going to just start over with a new project. So while this is part 2, you don't have to watch the other one to understand what's going on, because I am just going to take this from the top and figure this out as we go. So let's go ahead and just dive in. So I'm going to go over here to my screen, which is not showing up. Let's see what happens. Okay, there we go. There we are. And so I'm also doing this as kind of like a dual stream. So I've got a shorts feed going on as well, and we'll see how that goes. But if you're watching vertically, thanks for watching first of all, but then also let me know what you think. So the first thing I need to do is change my directory. So I'm going to go to my tutorial content, which I have a whole repo or a whole directory of tutorial repos. And then I'm going to do pnpx create payload app. And I'm going to set this to be MCP server. And I'll use the website template with a MongoDB and let that create. And as that's being created, I can open the project in WebStorm, which I'll do right now. Coding business. Okay. So that went to my tutorial repos, and I've got MCP server, and I can just open that, bring it over here. Now, last time I did not read all of the documentation, which I definitely should have done before jumping in. The main thing I want to call attention to here is this MCP plugin RFC, the request for comment. And so what this is telling us is a lot of the information that will make its way into the documentation but has not made it yet because this is in beta. So if you are looking to get started in the MCP server plugin, make sure you read this documentation first. So some of it is in the documentation, which is what we'll be using, but the thing that's not is getting the plugin for your IDE or whatever AI you plan on using. So I want to use Claude, and I can see here that I've got Claude code. So we're going to come back to this because I haven't generated an API key yet. So we're going to configure the MCP plugin, then we're going to come back in and set up your actual like how the IDE or AI is going to communicate. And thanks for saying that. Yes, I'm glad that I can make valuable content. And still to this day, it's been almost a year now that I've been making payload content. So I'm excited that people are still around for the journey. And I've learned a lot too as we've gone. So now we're going to go to the documentation for the MCP plugin. We're going to install it. So we run the command pnpm add plugin MCP. So I can open my terminal, install that. And now that that's installed, we can open up our payload config, which is under source. Excuse me. All right, so now in payload config, we can import this. We're going to import MCP plugin from our plugin MCP, and then down in our plugins array, we need to add MCP plugin. And we're going to set our collections. We're just going to include our posts and just say enabled and set it to true. All right, now that that's set to true, we can see that the description is missing, and description is required for each of these. So I'll say MCP server connection for posts. When I save this, that error should go away. And now I should be able to run pnpm dev and go to our admin page. And once the admin page loads, weird. All right, so now that that page has loaded, I'm using another database that already exists, so I should just be able to do my login from last week, which does work. And then I can come down here and we can see that we have this MCP section now. So if I click on this, I can create an API key. All of these exist, so I'm going to get rid of those. And so again, we can scroll down and we see API keys. When I click on that, I can create a new API key. I can create a new API key and enable it. And we're going to come back to this. We will need this. And I can just use my name. I'm the user. I don't need a label, but I can just say test MCP API. Description is fine. And then I want to be able to find and update and create. Sure, we'll also delete our posts. So we'll just enable all of this. So now what we just did is we enabled the plugin, and so we enabled it just for posts. So you might think that enabling here will just automatically enable all of these on the back end, but that's not true. For example, if we wanted to just control in a more fine-tuned kind of way, we could just set find to true and let the rest be false. And then we need to set a description here. And now if I save this and save my API key, we'll see that pages show up too. And the reason why the enabled doesn't just enable everything is because you want to be able to fine-tune configure each of these. So we can enable find pages and hit save. And now we can get set up with, for my case, Claude Code. So I'm going to first go to the MCP plugin documentation, and then I'm going to change directory to my MCP server project, and then I'm going to write in Claude MCP add transport HTTP payload HTTP, and then I can just do, I should be able to do, I'll just copy this example of 127.0.0.1.3000 API MCP, and then we'll say a header. And in that header, we need an authorization, which will be bearer, and then put in the API key I copied. And now I'm not publishing this project, so I don't care if my API is exposed here. Now if I hit enter, I have a typo. I missed the flag here. So again, this is Claude MCP add. It's 2 hyphens for the flag for transport. And now I can see that the MCP server for payload with URL here has been added to my local config with the authorization there. So now I should be able to go into Claude. And then if I look up MCP, I can see payload right there as I named it. Perfect. So now I should be able to say, list all of my pages. All right, and then it'll say payload find pages. So this is using the MCP server, and I can see that here because it's the tool use, and I can hit yes. And I can see that I have 2 pages. How about my posts? And so now it's doing find posts instead of find pages. And so I can hit yes. And it's adjusting how many I'm pulling. Limit 5, I guess. All right, so I'm hitting a token limit here. Find me the most recent post. So now I can see that the most recent post is called About Me and was made on October 29th. Now I can tell it to delete that post. And it's now using payload delete posts. And now I don't have to create a script. I don't have to go into my admin UI at all. My MCP server is taking care of all of it. So now I can have it create a new, so we've done read, which is find, we've done delete. So let's create a new post that's just a placeholder, use lorem ipsum text. And so now we can see that it is generating this page using a tool, which is our post create post tool. And now if I go over to my admin UI, I can go to my posts and I see lorem ipsum placeholder, and I can see everything that was just generated today at 7:20 p.m. Eastern. Perfect. So we've done a lot of the basic usage here. So we have added the plugin to our plugins array. We've gone through to add collection, which requires both slug and description. And you can also a function that allows you to override the data generated by the LLM before it is used in an operation. Not exactly sure what that means. A function that allows you to override the data generated by the LLM before it is used in an operation. So you have the opportunity to override what data is generated by the LLM by using the override option, which takes a function, and you can also return the response. So you can override both the data generated by the LLM and the response provided by the LLM from its operation tool call. So we've already talked about also enabling, which takes an object or a Boolean, which we talked about both. So the Boolean being true here, and then the object, you can include find, create, which I will just write this out explicitly so you can see it. Then we will have update as false, and then finally delete as false. And so these are all the options you can choose for your MCP server to communicate with your collections. And so we just covered all of those there. You can also choose to disable the MCP plugin. So conditionally, if you would like to not have it running during production or not running during development, you may be able to set it up that way. You can override the API key collection, which we did try last time. And really the only field that made sense to me then was to add a new field. We'll do override API collection. And just looking at the documentation, that does have an example for us right here. We can just get the collection. And then we're going to, in the collection, add fields push. And we're going to name it department, just like it has in the example, which will be a select type field, which will have options. And that will have one option being development, and I'm not going to really take my time here, and we'll do marketing here as well. And then below this, we can return our collection, add a comma, and then if we open up our API key collection, I can now see department here with development and marketing. So if you wanted to keep track of who has which API key, you can do that here as well. All right, so now we have MCP, which allows you to define MCP options down below. So this is only an object. So you can create custom tools to add to your MCP server, which needs to have a name, description, handler, and parameters, as well as prompts, which will have a name and a title, as well as a description, a handler, and argument schema. And we'll look at an example here in a second. You can, Yep, so you have a set of tools, restart here. So you can define some options with your MCP. The first option is tools. So in tools, you can include a name, a description, a handler, and parameters. Then you have prompts, which can also have a name, title, description, handler, and args schema. And then resources, which will have name, title, description, handler, URI, and MIME type. And then you can also include handler options for your MCP, which will have a base path, verbose logs if you want verbose logs to be logged to the console. Otherwise, it is defaulted to false, so you need to enable it to true. Then you have a max duration, so if you don't want the server requests to go beyond a minute or below a minute, if you want them to go beyond a minute or below a minute, you can do that here. And then finally, there are server options. So you can provide some server info for the MCP server, the name of the MCP server, and then the version. So all of these are defaults, and since that's the easier one, why don't we start there? So we're going to set our MCP, and then we're going to use server options. So the server options takes an object, and we're going to give it our server info, which is going to be another object, and that will have a name, of test MCP server and a version, which we'll just set to be 001, just so it's different from the original. So now if I save this, we're not going to see any real changes here. But if I go to Claude and I look up MCP, I wonder, let's restart. So with MCP here, we can see the server info. I'm not sure exactly where we see the server info, so let's take a look. Server info, not included in the RFC. So server options for the MCP server. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the info. So that tells me that it is in some JSON file somewhere. So I'm going to look for that real quick. So I know you guys can't really see this, and that's okay, because I'm just looking for my .claude JSON. I'm going to open with cursor, just so you guys can't see it. I don't know what's in this. Oh, well, there it is. Oh. Bunch of stuff showing up there. All right, so let's take a look. All right, so this is also not helpful. Okay, well, not important then. So this is mostly for internal use anyway, where you can, oh, let's try restarting the server. That would make sense. We're gonna figure this out, y'all. All right, so now if I go to Claude and look up MCP, still shows me the same thing. Let's restart Claude as well. There we go, connected again. All right, so regardless, this information is primarily going to be internal. So whatever you want to name your server and the version of your server, feel free to change that. So now if we go to the RFC, we can start looking through some of the options here as well. So they recommend here in the RFC to use very precise descriptions of your collections here. So for an example, we can just do something like this posts collection contains a variety of blogs on different topics about web development. All right, and then this one will be the pages collection is where I house all of my businesses data. Rookie mistake there. Businesses data, like the about me and home pages. Great, so that should help. Moving along here, we can have different tools here. So this tool is an example of rolling a dice. So you can just maybe give it a different example here. If we do within MCP, we can add a tools array, which will have an array of objects. We'll call this one name of give me a number. And so this will just give a random number between 1 and 50, just to give an example. So we'll have a handler that takes args, which will have a record of string or unknown. Then we will have a constant of, well, I need to think this through a little bit. So the handler is going to let's do it this way. Yeah, so we'll do constant of number is equal to args dot numbers. Okay, yeah, so this is going to be a great one-to-one example here. So as a number or 50. Oh, we need to have a comma up there. Then we can have the result. Oh, I don't need the comma there. Which will be math floor, do math random plus 1. Should be able to do times 50 here for that. And then we're going to return a promise that resolve with content. And that content will have an object, and we'll scroll this down a little bit here. And that content will have a type, which will be text as constant. And then text will keep this here. Number, guess result, some white space, bold, number will be result. And so now we need to provide beneath our handler some parameters. The parameters will be a Zod object. And here we don't have Zod installed. So we need to fix that. And here is a key thing to keep in mind. So we are going to npm add Zod, which is going to install the latest version, which is not a version that we can use for the MCP server quite yet. That's not on payload, that is on Zod, but a fix is coming soon. So we're going to set this to be 3, should be 0.25, 0.76, which is the newest stable release for 3.25, and then run npm I. And then we have the correct version of Zod, where we can then import Z from Zod and have no issues going forward here. So in here, we're going to have number, I think numbers is what it needs to be. And this will be Z number int min of 1, max of 50. Sure, it'll be optional. Default will be 50. And to give it a little description here, we'll describe. Make this a little cleaner to read. Describe will say something like number to guess. And then at the end of this, we can add shape. And so now I'm giving this too easy of a task, and I have number up here, which is something that I need to have as a way to tell it what to give me. So I can say that a max value here can just be times number, and say something like, give me a random number between 1 and a number I set. And we'll say a max of 100 up to 100. And now this should take a user input. Oh, okay, and then this needs to be an array. Wait, no. Yes. This needs to be an array of objects here. So I can move type and text up here. All right, let's think about this real quick. I'm probably just trying to do too much right now. So content needs to be an array, and then inside the array needs to have an object. That object needs to have type and text, and then that means this doesn't need to be there. That does though. Perfect. So now I should be able to go to Claude, code over here, and say run give me a number. Let's see what happens. I may need to generate types before I do this, because this is going to, yep. All right, so first let's go to MCP. I don't see this as a new tool, so that means that we should need to, let's do payload generate types, and then run pnpm dev. Then restart Claude here. And then let's go look at our MCP and see after this connects that we now have 6 tools instead of 5. And if I scroll down, I can see give me a number. So give a random number between 1 and a number that I set up to 100. And it tells me what parameters I have and describes it. So that describe option that I selected here tells Claude what this does. So now if I do run tool give me a number, this should still run with a default of 50. Yep, there we go. We can see 50 right there. I can hit yes, and it gives me 14. I didn't give it a actual markdown thing here. So now that should actually come out as bold. And now if I say give me a number, 99, we now have this random new tool that shows me a random number whenever I need it. So there are ways to make this more useful, but this is just one way to get something up and running. So that covers our MCP tools. Now if we go down and we look at prompts, we see an example here for prompts as well. So let's take a look at this one. You can also create your own prompts to extend the capabilities of your server. here is an example of a basic reusable prompt that echoes a message. So we can think of this maybe as instructions. But let's try this example first. So I'm going to add prompts, which also takes an array of objects, which will have a name. We'll use this example exactly. We'll echo with our arg schema of message being a Zod string, and then a description, which again we'll say creates a prompt to process a message, and then title it echo prompt. We will come up with a better example here in a minute. Then we'll need our handler, which will take a function, which will have our message, which will take a string, message string. Then we will use our messages here as an array. And within it, we'll need our content, which will have a type of text. And the text will be, please process this message. And that will say message. And we're giving this a role. So underneath content, we can add role of user. So I'm going to look real quick at the prompts from the MCP, the Model Context Protocol. And we can see what this shows us here. So the role that we just set here of user comes from the MCP documentation. So you can either choose user or assistant. So the user indicates the speaker, or sorry, the role indicates the speaker between either the user or the assistant. And the content is one of the following types, which is going to be the text content that we said. You can also use image and audio as well as embedded resources. So all of this information here from the content, the type, the text, the role, all of that comes from the MCP specifications. It's not payload specific. So now if I get back to this, I have this message that should just echo my message. So I'll restart my server. I'll first generate types, which I didn't need to do. Excuse me. All right, so now that that's reset, I can reset Claude. Make sure that my MCP server connects. And it says connected now. And still 6 tools because now I have tools and prompts. So now I can go back to Claude and say echo this message. And now I can see that it's very silly, I know. It echoes this message and then it says this message. So, well, let's see. Use the prompt echo for this message. Let's see if this gets us a different example. Well, I don't want it to give me a number. Let's see what it does though. Okay, what prompts do you have available? So it's using a bunch of tokens to see what prompts are available. For payload, here I see tools, but I don't see prompts. Interesting. So, oh, here we go. So we see a prompt here. I can then see, if I had just known Claude better, I can just do something like this message. Okay. Payload echo. Yeah, see, what is this doing? Well, let's try a different prompt then. So say you have a prompt that you use often, like summarize this post. Well, I don't want to have to type summarize XYZ post every time. So let's combine some things here. So we will, in our prompts, we will include a new object, which will have a name of summarize post. We'll have an args schema, which will have a message. Again, that will be a Z string. Then a description. Creates a prompt to summarize the specified post. And then we're going to title this summarize post and include a handler, which will take a message, which will be a string. Take our messages in an array with content. And that content will have a text as well as a type option. Text will be, please summarize this post. And then we'll just use the message, and this will be text. And let's try this differently. We're going to use a different role. We're going to use the assistant role. So now, again, I'll need to, let's just try restarting Claude. So when I restarted Claude, MCP server should be connected. Not sure if that worked. So I'm going to restart my server. Then I'm going to restart Claude. Pull up my MCP server, make sure that this loads up. Then I can do payload, and then I can see summarize post as well as my echo. So I'm going to summarize post, and I will say lorem ipsum placeholder. All right, so it's first going to find the posts. And then it summarized it for me. So let's see if it can do this with let's see if we can do it with the home page, even though I didn't specify that it can use pages. So it's not going to be able to do it. Well, let's give it a second. So it went to posts, found that there was no post labeled home. Now it's at pages, and now it's going to find the home page. and now it summarizes the homepage for me. So again, very simple example of what you can do with this. There's really endless things you can do with it, especially since you can include image content and audio content as well. All right, so we've gone through now our prompts. Next up is resources. So we've done tools, we've done prompts, excuse me, and the last part is resources. Oh wait, no, we have handler options as well. Let's see if that's included in here. Handler options, nope, don't see it. All right, so what handler options are available? All right, yeah, let's look at the handler options first. So I'm gonna come up here just to make it easier to see what I'm doing. So if I do handler options, we can change the base path from something like API to, why not, CMS. We'll see what happens. Then let's set our verbose logs to true instead of false. In max duration, I want to set it as 60 still. This will just time out anything that goes for over a minute, but if I wanted something to like run for only 10 seconds, or if I knew it wasn't like a hefty prompt or anything like that, I would set it lower. But this works for me. And that's all that there is for handler options. So again, I'm just going to create a payload, generate types, and then pnpm dev. Let those run together. Then we need to restart Claude. And now I can see that my MCP server has failed, and that's because the route is no longer it's no longer API, it's CMS. So this isn't letting me open up my account, or this isn't letting me open up my browser to authenticate, so I need to go back and I actually need to run the installation script again. So that means I need to come here to where it says API, and I can set this to CMS. Then beyond that, maybe I don't want this to be named payload, but I can just do something like pcms. I'll just do payload MCP server test, just to mix up the title a little bit. So that got added. Now if I run Claude, now it says 3 MCP servers. I can't connect, so let's restart this. And then restart Claude. There we go. So if I do MCP, all of these failed. And so I'm getting a 404 for CMS MCP. So now if I go to the API route though, I wonder, so let's see what happens if I create a new one. I'll do demo author, hit save, I go to API. Okay, so that didn't work. Let's see if maybe I have to do, oops, something like What was it before? API MCP. Yeah, that should be fine. But I wonder if maybe I need to add API after the CMS part. Doesn't look like it. Let's restart this one more time. So it's not connecting to any of these anymore. Let's try. We're just out here exploring, y'all. MCP. Let's restart this server. I don't know if I actually did that. Oh, I need to try reinstalling it. Go back into Claude. Weird. But if I set this back to be API, oops, I can access it again, MCP. So if I set this to be CMS again, just to give this a shot, that's going to disconnect everything, that's fine. But then, instead of, what did I do? CMS API, let's try API CMS. Okay, load up Claude. And so that, well, I didn't restart this yet. Okay. Weird. Well, that one's going to be wrong anyway. So I don't know how to change this from the original base path. So if we go back, we're looking at handler options, the base path for the MCP server, default API, which works as expected. I change it to CMS, no longer works as expected. And then if I come here, I see API, MCP API keys. Oh, look at that. So custom tools get added and you can select those to be added or subtracted as well. So if you don't want certain API keys to have certain custom tools, you don't have to. Do we just want to check one last? No, I already did this. Okay. So regardless, we need to go back then, reinstall the original MCP. Then get back to Claude, which will then connect. Oh, first, it won't connect until I go back to the default. All right, so now I see these two not working, but I have this one back. So I'm going to look into BasePath, but remember this is in beta, so not everything is expected to work exactly as you expect. So now we can move on to verbose logs, which I have set to true, but they default to false. So let us see what we can do here. So give me a number. Let's give it an error. So it can't give me a number between 1 and 101 because I didn't let it. So it'll use 100 instead of 101. I wonder as well if I come down here and for content, I add a role of assistant as well. Not sure if this is exactly how this works. Guess we'll find out. So let's try that again. All right, so the tone changed a little bit, but let's see. Okay, so the verbose logs look like it's doing this here. So if I set verbose logs to false, which is the default, and then I ask, give me a number. We're not going to see all of those be logged again. So I'm going to leave these as true, just so I can keep up to date with everything that is being done. All right, so did the tone really change here? Let's see what prompts do messages. Control. So the shapes are a little bit different here, but let's see. Content is expected to be an array, if I remember right. Well, it is. I don't think this is going to work. No. But we should be able to. I don't know if role actually works for tools, but we can look real quick. So tool documentation isn't here. Oops. But it is here. So we can look through our tools. And tools do not get a role. so the tone doesn't actually change. Good to know. So I can remove role here. Then come back to our MCP plugin because we have max duration. That's really self-explanatory. If I set this to like 1, first of all, nothing's going to run. It's going to all time out. So I'll go ahead and proceed. Maybe it won't time out. But if I do something like, let's do our summarize post. So I think all of this is just moving too fast. So 1's not going to do anything for me either. So we'll just set this back to a minute. But anything beyond a minute, if it's still running, will cease to work. All right, so we've gone through everything except for resources. All right, so it appears that resources is similar to how Cursor has the ability to add documentation to the IDE setting. So why don't we try that, where we can do something like, I should probably do resources, and then let's do name. We can add, why not, shadcn MCP, which I know exists. Description, this resource is the documentation of shadcn. We'll set the MIME type to be, I don't know what examples this can take, so let's take a look at the documentation. Can take really anything. So why don't we just go to our shadcn. Shadcn MCP server. Then move this out of the way. And minimize this, which is also in my way. All right, so there may not actually be a way to add these. Let's take a look. Okay, so let's not do an MCP server. Let's just do payload docs, payload. And so this will just be text, HTML probably. Then let's look back at the documentation. You can really look here instead. Then we'll have the title of payload docs, then URI, which should be a string, which we'll just do https payloadcms.com/docs. Okay. And then I need, finally, a handler. And this handler is going to take the URI. And then we need our contents, which will be our URI.href. And then text, payload, docs. Let's see if this works. So I'll restart that server, then restart Claude. Connected here. I do see, actually now I don't need to because verbose logs are on. I can see that the resource payload docs has been registered. So if I go back, tell me about the resource payload. Well, first, let's see, because this, when it got registered for prompts, I was able to see them here by typing in prompts. So I can see the prompts there. But then can I find, oops, resource? Okay, so I don't see my resources. So let's go over to our API keys. Okay, so it doesn't show up here in my collection either. So tell me about the payload docs resource. Do I need to have MIME type? I do. So let me see, MIME type of HTML. So I have that right. Restart the servers. All right, so payload docs are registered. Then we can try that again. Let's take a look at the actual documentation of resources here. Okay, so it looks like you can use HTTPS for this, but for some reason Claude isn't connecting to payload and its documentation. So I get an error. Oh, first of all, that needs to be content. Now, if we try this again, so contents instead of content. Add Claude, make sure the MCP server connects. Was impatient there. Hit back. We're good now. So now I have resources. Tell me again. So now we see that there is no error. We see the contents and it was able to access it. So tell me how, why, oops. Use the payload docs resource to tell me why I should use block references. So now the MCP server should use that resource to tell me all about block references. But instead it's fetching. So I'll tell it explicitly to use the resource. Oh. All right, so the resource just tells me, the resource just tells Claude where to look. So if I say use payload docs resource to tell me when to use block references, and let's see what it comes up with, because it is going to have to fetch the documents. All right, based on general payload CMS knowledge. So I'm going to tell it to go ahead and fetch the documentation so it can tell me. Oh, no, it's not going to. All right. So probably not the best example here, but you can come in and add a payload docs resource, which will be the documentation. What might be more helpful, though, is we have a README file. So I could, instead of using this, have my resources, set the URI to be I wonder if I have to have this in both places. It looks like it. All right, so I can set my URI to be a file instead. Do our MCP server. Then I should just have my readme.mcp MD. Let this be text markdown. Instead of docs, this will just be my README. README. And then finally, README. And the URI, this should actually be here. And then here in the handler, I can do URI href. So now let's try it this way. So we have an actual file that we're using. Then we'll see in our terminal here that README is now registered. Tell me about the README resource. Well, that's wrong. So I see README here. So what if we do copy path reference? All right. So contents. Okay, so the contents then. I don't know what this is going to give me, if anything. So if I hit save here, we're here exploring together. I should restart this first, actually. Claude. Because I don't know if it's actually going to read that data. So I wonder if I need to have the text. All right, restart Claude. Try this one more time. This is the last setting though, so I will make this my sign off as well. So what resources are available? So you can access that using the MCP server. See if we can fix that error. Because I would like to just be able to put this project up and call it quits. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, I don't want to do all this. Okay, so that's fun. All right, so this is the last thing here. And for resources, what this is meant to do is it's meant to take whatever your own file is, or if you download documentation, you're pointing the MCP server to that documentation or to that file to then return the contents of that file. So here, I obviously don't have anything like that except for the README, which the MCP server can find without help there. So for resources, feel free to build upon the MCP server and extend its functionality using the resources in that way. But that's all the configuration options that there are for this. So just over here in the documentation, we'll go through just to sum up everything that we talked about. We went over the collections object, which has the slug, the description, and an override for the data generated by the LLM, as well as the response override for the LLM. You can then enable it by CRUD features or CRUD operations, create, update, find, delete. You can disable it either conditionally or just disabling altogether. You can override the actual API key collection, which we did using this department select field. You can create your own tools, which we did here with give me a number, where I just asked it to give me a number between 1 and 100. It won't go to 101 as we tested. And that takes the name, description, handler, and parameters, which we covered all of that here in the tools. Then you can select your own prompts, which we used one silly example of echo, but you can also set something like summarize prompt or summarize post. And so this summarized some of our posts for us. That way we just have quick access to whatever information we want about our posts. Then we selected our server options, which provided a name and a version for it. And we also mentioned here that all collections require a description, and that description should be very specific about what you want the MCP server to do with those collections. So that's it for the MCP server. I have actually officially coded until my payload CMS became an MCP server. So mission accomplished this time. My computer didn't crash, so I love that. But that's it. I'm going to turn this into more of a streamlined tutorial, but I really enjoyed working with this plugin. It is in beta, so I will say that once again, that if you do plan on using the MCP server for anything, be sure to understand that it may not always be how it is in this video. So even when I make a streamlined tutorial about it, or even just chop up this video to have that tutorial about it, chances are something has changed and it's a breaking change. So just be aware of that. Check the documentation, check the Discord, make sure that you're on top of that because things change. Always be reading also the release notes from the Payload CMS team. They usually have about one update per week, and that will call out any breaking changes, especially in the beta tools that we have. So next up, I think I'm going to do the Cloudflare new template, so deploying to Cloudflare, so that'll be fun. I'll do something similar to this where I'm going to do a whole stream about it, and then I can chop that up into whatever content I want it to be. So there's that. I think I've done folders before, but I can do folders again. But if there's anything that you want to see, please let me know. Just leave a comment either now or in the future, and I'll be happy to look into it and see if it's something that I'm able to cover. Because as we saw here, sometimes I can struggle if I don't do the research ahead of time. So I'm looking forward to trying out this new method of getting videos out. So excited for that. If I look at my notes right quick, yes, I take notes of what I want to talk about and things that I want to do. So if I look at my stream ideas, this is the MCP. Yep, I had Cloudflare next. I'll probably throw in the ecom stuff soon as well. That seems to have a lot of things to get figured out, but it's coming along. And then I also want to, instead of doing dedicated upgrade guides, do those on streams as I go through and talk about all of the key features. And then also working with other technologies that are not Next.js. So things like Astro, I've been asked to do Nuxt, and even unhinged things like maybe running it with Flask or Python in general, and seeing if I'm able to make something happen with that. There's a ton of stuff that I can cover, so please let me know what you want me to cover, and I'll go over that and keep it in consideration as well. But this was fun. MCP server is going to be a lot of fun as soon as it starts getting into more of a production-ready state. I already have a couple of ideas in mind after this video of how I'm going to include it in my projects. So, going to be a lot of fun. If you're not already, subscribe to my channel. Your support helps me to grow and continue making videos like this, which reminds me I also have a Patreon. I'll leave the link in the description, but you can find that by going to my channel or looking up, I think it's NLV Codes on Patreon. And I have a newsletter, Next in Dev, which you can find, I think you could just Google Next in Dev. Regardless, you can find it on my website, nlvcodes.com, where I have also the Patreon link too. So, looking forward to the next one. Thanks for hanging out on this one, and I will see you next time.